So hello and welcome to yet another episode of TopTenz. I'm your interim host, Karl Smallwood. That's Karl with a K and Smallwood with a small wood. And today we're talking about 10 travel destinations that could absolutely kill you, but you can still visit. And today's video, like all videos on the TopTenz channel, is based on a script submitted to us by a member of our writing team. That writing team member today being Himanshu Sharma. Give them a follow on social media links below if you are so inclined. While you're down there clicking on things, you can also like the video, comment with feedback, suggestions, maybe tell us where's the most remote, dangerous place in the world you yourself have visited, and subscribe for more content like this. Let's get to it. So travelling is all about going off the beaten path and finding places most people have never seen or heard of before. Sometimes though that strategy can backfire as the world is full of dangerous, deadly places that are simply not meant to be explored. From deadly deserts full of skeletons to some of the most unforgiving jungles you can find. These are 10 of the most perilous travel destinations in the world which, despite their dangers, you can still totally visit if you really want to. Number 10. Ciudad Juarez in Mexico. Located right on the US-Mexico border, Ciudad Juarez seems like the perfect destination for a road trip from nearby countries, with travel-orientated site Wikivoyage noting that upon arrival in Ciudad Juarez, a tourist can expect to be greeted by locals, and I quote, more resembling cowboys than any other vision of a Mexican one might have, which they know offers a more authentic and charming view of the region for the curious traveller. That said, a quick look at TripAdvisor shows that the city does have an Applebee's for the less discerning palate. Instead, Ciudad is widely considered one of the most dangerous cities bordering the United States, dominated by drug cartels and boasting a homicide rate comparable to some of the most hazardous urban areas in the world. This isn't to say you can't visit the city and enjoy sites like the Museo de la Revolución. It's just that the US State Department strongly advises against any travel to this town, and it's kind of easy to understand why, with homicides peaking at over 10,000 from 2008 to 2011. It could even be called the murder capital of the world, or at least the murder capital of all the cities in the world with an Applebee's. Currently, travellers to this town can get caught up in the ongoing brutal rivalry among the Juarez, Sinaloa and Jalisco new generation cartels, which is a major contributor to violence. Making things just a little bit worse is the security situation in the country, as corruption is rampant among the city's police force. But let's say you don't want to go to a city and instead want to go somewhere altogether more scenic, more remote. Well, why don't you try going to number 9, Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. Bikini Atoll sounds like the perfect beach destination. It's got the word bikini right there in it, somewhere in the Pacific, and it almost is, except for the deadly levels of radiation around near enough every nook and cranny of the place. It's one of the many coral atolls that make up the Marshall Islands, a Central Pacific country surrounded by crystal blue waters on all sides. Unfortunately, it was also deemed to be the perfect place to carry out countless nuclear tests during its occupation by the United States. A Cliff Notes version is that from 1946 to 1948, some 67 nuclear bombs were detonated in the region. Natives weren't too happy, but the US didn't really care and moved them to different places to make doing all that possible. But understandably, many of them now want to move back to their ancestral homes, as Cold War and the era of intensive nuclear testing is, thankfully, long behind us. And just because the natives can't return to their ancestral home doesn't mean you can't go there and TikTok dance in the place that inspired the place SpongeBob lives. If you didn't know that, yeah? Bikini Bottom, Bikini Atoll, weird, mutant talking fish. That blew my mind when I learned it. Anyway, so there are several admittedly specialised tour operators offering everything from diving trips to see the many radioactive wrecks littering the ocean floor to sightseeing trips to just see the island. Just be sure that you get some really good insurance before you go, and conveniently, many of the tour operators offering trips to Bikini Atoll offer such insurance as standard. How's that for convenience? And let's say you want to go to an island but don't really like tropical paradises, why not try going to number 8, Anthrax Island in Scotland. Anthrax Island is located in the Gruinard Bay in the northwest coast of Scotland. When it was initially uninhabited, the island became infamous as a test site for germ warfare experiments during the Second World War. In particular, they tested anthrax there on sheep. The experiments started due to fears of an imminent Nazi biological bomb, prompting then Prime Minister Winston Churchill to authorise the programme in 1942. It eventually led to permanent contamination of the island. Today, it's safe to say it's one of the most dangerous spots you could pick on your trip to Scotland. That isn't a nightclub in Edinburgh after 2 a.m. Anthrax Island remained off limits for some 48 years due to contamination. Then, in 1986, a group known as, awesomely, the Dark Harvest harvest commandos, brought attention to the issue by taking soil from the island and dumping it at a biological research facility in Wiltshire, forcing the authorities to search for the location. It was soon discovered that the soil came from Gruinard Island, aka Anthrax Island, resulting in a cleanup effort in 1986, which actually worked pretty well because the heirs to the island actually managed to buy it back from the government in 1990 for the amount the government bought it from their ancestors, £500, and allowed tour operators to just begin making trips to the island. Understandably, its location is quite remote and getting to and from the island is actually kind of difficult, and there's not really much to see there. It was uninhabited after all, except for all the anthrax sheep. But it does supposedly boast some pretty good views of the local locks and landmarks. So, yeah. Speaking of landmarks, why not visit number 7, Death Valley, California. Probably the most famous one on this list, located in the vast desert of eastern California, the very aptly named Death Valley is not a place you'd like to be lost in. Its many dangers include the expected unseasonable heat, which can range from 57 degrees Celsius or 135 degrees Fahrenheit during summer months. But other dangers include unexpectedly flash floods that can quickly inundate canyons during rainstorms, along with multiple hazardous mines and unstable tunnels which you can fall into. The Sidewinder, a deadly pit viper, is another threat you can encounter here if you didn't already think that Mother Nature was out to get you for visiting a place called Death Valley. The harsh conditions and record-breaking temperatures make Death Valley one of the most perilous holiday destinations in the world. The violence of nature is evident just in the landscape itself, as the valley is home to features like multiple ancient volcanoes and a huge crater that's almost a mile wide, and rock formations shaped by centuries, if not millennia, of seismic activity. But despite the unforgiving conditions, Death Valley is a place teeming with a variety of life, including coyotes, ravens, desert tortoises, the Scottish Castle, a historic structure built by a gold miner, all of which attracts thousands of visitors annually. Just remember to bring lots of sunscreen. And speaking of bringing lots of sunscreen and the word death, why not try visiting number 6, Death Road, Bolivia. The Carretera de los Yungas, or the North Yungas Road, is considered by many to be the most dangerous road in the entire world, as it's also sometimes called Death Road by locals and visitors alike. Originally built by Paraguayan prisoners of war after the Chaco War from 1932 to 1935, it got its name after a series of accidents and deaths in the 1990s, stretching some 22.61 miles between La Paz and Chiriquio in Bolivia. The narrow road reaches heights of over 10,000 feet above sea level, with sheet drops of up to 2,000 feet and treacherous turns throughout the entire route. Other factors that contribute to its reputation are dense fog, landslides, and unpredictable weather, making the journey even harder than it already is. The Death Road was once infamous for claiming some 200 lives annually, with an estimated 26 vehicles per year just simply plunging over the edge. Tourists will tell you, though, that all of this risk is totally worth it, as it's one of the few ways to reach a national park, and the views along the road are reportedly to die for. Of course, this doesn't come cheap, and you'll have to pay $50 Bolivia to access the road, which is about $8 American. As you've probably guessed, this fee is put towards much needed renovations on the road. Speaking of which, recently there was the construction of an alternative route between the two destinations, which is notably very popular with cyclists who wish to test their mettle by riding along the Weenie Hut Jr. equivalent of Bolivia's deadliest highway. But speaking of deadly things that go quite high, number 5, Anak Krakatoa, Indonesia. On first look, Anak Krakatoa comes across as one of the thousands of islands that make up the Indonesian archipelago. Adventurers can even hire a boat of their own to go and explore it, except that it's highly discouraged by the government. In fact, the island is protected by a government-enforced exclusion zone of about 3 miles, as it also happens to be the site of one of the world's most dangerous active volcanoes. Anak Krakatoa translates to, quite literally, Child of Krakatoa, as the island was formed by the eruption of the Krakatoa volcano in 1927, which was 45 years after a previous eruption destroyed the original island in the middle of the Sunda Strait, generating a 120 feet high tsunami that killed more than 36,000 people. Since then, the volcano has caused multiple tsunamis in the region, threatening the lives and livelihoods of people living on nearby islands. Which doesn't mean you can't just go visit it, with several tour operators offering visits to the volcano during its, and I quote, sleeping periods. Read the days it's not actively spewing lava everywhere. But don't worry though, on the days where the volcano is awake, they do offer tours to see the lava glow, where tour operators know that you can literally hear the earth being torn apart from several miles away and see the glow of the lava against the Indonesian night sky. are. Speaking of spectacular views of the volcanic variety, why not try visiting number 4, the Danakil Desert in northeast Africa. The Danakil Desert is located in a geographically depressed region in northeastern Africa shared by Ethiopia, Eritrea and Djibouti. While it looks like it'd make some amazing Instagram photographs, and it does, it also is one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. Locals actually call it the gateway to hell, and for pretty good reason. The desert is one of the lowest and hottest places we know of, sitting at 400 feet below sea level, with temperatures capable of reaching 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 50 degrees Celsius. The region was formed due to near constant volcanic activity in the area, to the point where the air is still filled with harmful gases like sulfur and carbon dioxide. Which sounds bad, but the side effect is that it's resulted in several vividly coloured hot springs and lava lakes, which, while impressive in looks, pose serious health risks, as the acidity of the water found here is comparable to battery acid. In addition to its geology, the security situation in and around Danakil Desert is also quite precarious. The region is, to put it lightly, politically volatile, particularly along the border with Eritrea. Solo travel is strictly prohibited by all 3 countries, and all groups must be accompanied by armed guards due to past incidents of terrorism, including the kidnapping of some tourists in 2012. However, if you're willing to take that risk and can deal with a very long flight to the town of Mekelle and a half-day drive to the desert proper, you can enjoy the almost primordial geography of the Danakil salt pans, into which some tour operators actually cut small pools that they describe as mini Dead Seas that you can float in, that are just warmed by the naturally warm, air of the area. So you can just float in your own personal miniature Dead Sea. Likewise, you can also visit the still shifting volcanic craters of Atoll and see the glow of lava against the pristine Ethiopian sky. Don't worry about the toxic gases though, because gas masks are provided. For a small fee, of course. Speaking of paying a small fee to do something cool, you can also try visiting number 3, the Valley of Death in Russia. The Kamchatka Peninsula is a remote region in the eastern part of Russia. According to many travelers, it's one of the last truly unspoiled places in the world, with some of the most pristine landscapes comprising of mountains, lakes, grasslands, and much more. The Valley of Death, however, is not usually ranked among these pristine areas. It was discovered by 2 hunters in the 1930s at the foot of a volcano in the eastern part of the peninsula. The valley is arid with no grass or real plant growth, and one can still find carcasses of animals and birds littered across its surface. Carcasses, we should note, that seemingly never decompose due to the sheer amount of toxicity in the air, killing the bacteria that would allow that to happen. According to the locals, around 80 people have died exploring this valley over the years due to the toxic mix of gases like hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, carbon diosulfide and others that accumulate in the valley lowlands from a nearby volcano. While you can't visit the valley proper, it's closed to tourists for obvious reasons, you can still see it from other parts of the valley from specially constructed viewing decks. And if you actually have the cash to flash, you can even take a helicopter tour over the entire thing and pretend you're in a Jurassic Park sequel. Speaking of a place filled with dangerous wild animals, why not try visiting number 2, the Daran Gap on the Colombia-Panama border. The Daran Gap is a relatively small strip of land connecting the continents of North and South America. It's also one of the most dangerous jungles in the world, with its most notorious stretch spanning about 60 miles. While the place has traditionally attracted adventurers seeking the thrill of exploring its near impenetrable forests, the Daran Gap has recently become infamous as a dangerous route for migrants attempting to walk across the United States. Tens of thousands of people walk through the treacherous terrain each year, facing challenges ranging from disease, the aforementioned very dangerous animals, and then criminal gangs that control several parts of the region. Due to its extreme conditions, some 137 deaths or disappearances were reported on this route in 2022 alone. Though migrants aren't the only visitors here. As adventure tourism grows, tour agencies around the world are now organising excursions into the Daran Gap. The packages range from a few $100 to a few $1,000 and are primarily targeted at tourists that want the exclusivity of remote and dangerous terrain. But let's say you want to go to a place where you're not going to be bothered by anybody, whether that be animal or person. You could always try visiting our number 1 on this list, the Skeleton Coast in Namibia. Located between the Namib Desert and the Atlantic Ocean, the Skeleton Coast is a long strip of coastline in Namibia that looks straight out of a CGI-generated movie. It's also very aptly named because it's quite literally just full of skeletons, which has led to it being referred to by locals as the land that God made in anger. And it stretches about 310 miles from Swakopmund to the Angolan border, and it was named after the variety of animals and indeed human skeletons you can find here, along with countless skeletons of ships from the era of colonization. And what makes the place exceptionally dangerous is the combination of natural factors found here that seemingly want to do nothing but kill whatever tries to trespass upon it. You have shallow sandbars, gale-force winds, dense fog, along with reefs stretching deep into the sea. And the skeletons of about 500 ships, from wooden Portuguese galleons to modern steel-hulled vessels, are still visible along the coast. And if that wasn't enough, lions, hyenas can often be found prowling the coastline for prey or, eating the carcasses of things that have died there, coupled with about 11 shark species that have been found in the offshore waters. But not every animal on the Skeleton Coast wants to kill you or is a skeleton, because if you happen to visit the region between November and the New Year, you might find local seal populations nursing their pups. However, it is advised that you don't get too close, because the males will protect their harem by charging at you and trampling you to death with their big blubbery bodies. So don't say you weren't warned. So I hope everybody out there found this video to be educational, informative, and entertaining. I certainly found the script to be all three of those things. If you agree, you can go let the author Himanshu Sharma know at the social media links found below. You can also find mine down there, but you don't need to congratulate me. I'm just reading the script. They did the work. Also, if you like the video, you can leave a like. If you've got more things to say about it, do so in the comments. Let us know the region of the world you've been. I think, personally, the region of the world I've been, that's not the most remote, but it's probably the one that I think is probably the place the fewest people have been, is the forbidden part of the Great Wall of China, aptly named because there's just signs saying don't go here. So if you go to the Great Wall of China, there's certain parts that are put off to just don't go here because it's all dilapidated and stuff. And my friend who, had been living there for a couple of years at that point said, don't worry, I know a place. And I thought, are we allowed to go here? Like, yeah, don't worry about it. And we get there and I'm thinking, are we going to get in trouble? I was like, no, it's fine. So how do you know it's fine? And just pointing, there was a lady with a cooler full of beer, because they know that tourists are going to go off the beaten track and they're probably going to want a beer when they're doing it. Because when you are climbing a several thousand-year-old dilapidated wall that's several thousand feet into the air and is on top of a mountain range, you want to have at least 3 beers in you. So yeah, went there, climbed to the top, and just had my lunch, which I bought from 7-Eleven, because there's a 7-Eleven next to the Great Wall of China. So yeah, I ate a 7-Eleven chow mein with a couple of beers on top the forbidden part of the Great Wall of China while looking into Mongolia. Great. So yeah, if anyone's got any similar stories, let us know in the comments. But as always, go out there and have the day that you deserve. Cheers.